You can build your own playlist, artist-owned playlist. Make your own playlist, link it on your Spotify, put your song out, but then tell your fans, hey, here's a playlist I made of a bunch of things that inspired me, and then sprinkle your own music throughout it. And then there's another benefit. If people start engaging with your music and other artists, Spotify realizes, oh, your music is associated. People that like your music also likes these other music. And then those other artists in their Discover Weekly are going to get their fans recommended your music.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Headliner Mindset Podcast. Today's guest is the vice president and co-founder of the independent record label Fixt. Launched in 2006 in partnership with the artist Cell Dweller, Fixt is putting out an eclectic mix of genres ranging from EDM and synthwave to full-on heavy metal. They offer not only publishing and merchandise services to their artists, but they also are going above and beyond to support them with their education, their well-being, and their overall success. This is James Rhodes.
Happy to be here. Thanks for the intro and looking forward to the chat here.
Yeah, man, I'm stoked to have you on. It's really cool to be connected. You know, we had a great conversation recently where I really got to learn a lot about your record label and what you guys are doing over there. And, you know, I had Johnny from The Browning on a few episodes ago, and that was such a cool, for me, that was such a cool interview to have because, as everybody knows on here by now, I'm a fucking metalhead, and I'm also a total raver, and they're doing this really cool intersection of electronic music and metal. They were actually in town just on Friday, just this last weekend. And so I got to go see them live, and holy shit, they knocked my fucking socks off. Like, they were so good live where it was like, I'm in the pit 1 minute, but then we're like, it's like hard style the next minute, and it's like a rave, but like it was unlike anything I'd ever seen. So, really cool to get connected, you know, through just this, mutual love for all types of different genres of music.
Yeah, we have had a long history of blending the electronic music world and the rock and metal world since the beginning. Clayton from Cell Dweller, he has, you know, been pioneering the fusion of electronic rock in some capacity since the early 90s. He had a project, Circle of Dust, which is how I first discovered him. And then ever since, you know, we started Fixt in 2006, there's always been this balance of pulling between the rock and the electronic side. And sometimes it leans more one way, sometimes more the other way. But that's awesome that you got to see the Browning live. I actually haven't even been to the live show yet. So,
oh, they were good, man. They were dialed in. They were very, very dialed in. It was a very, very fun show. And I love that you guys are, I mean, really like just creating your own lane. And I think that's so important because there's just so much stuff out there that looks the same, that sounds the same. You know, everyone's kind of, I don't know, they're using the same sample packs. It's like one of the biggest downfalls of the music industry is just this sort of lack of originality. And you guys have figured out how to really carve out your own lane and do something special and unique and different as a collective, as a record label. And I just have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, the curation of who we work with is definitely one of our key ingredients to still being around 18 years later as a label. And, you know, for artists to catch our radar and be the right fit, we're definitely looking for artists that are unique. There's a million clones of everything else out there. So we don't want something that sounds like everything else. So, you know, we do have kind of a sound that we have fostered as a label. So we do have fans that just love anything we put out. But if you dig into each artist, they're definitely unique and don't sound pretty much like anything else out there.
Yeah. It's kind of like that movie studio A24. I don't know if you're a movie buff like I am, but there's this movie studio, production studio called A24. They put out the coolest movies ever, and they put out everything from horror movies. They put out like The Witch and what was the other? Hereditary. If you guys are into horror at all, really cool psychological thrillers. But then they also put out really funny movies too, and they actually explore all these different genres. But there's always this common feeling and this tone and sort of like the cinematography and just who they choose as directors, whether it's a comedy or whether it's a horror, there's still this same like flavor to it.
Yeah, I think a thread that we have kind of woven throughout things from when it's, more EDM releases to more metal, and then we also do synthwave, is there's kind of this sci-fi cyberpunk vibe to a lot of what we do. And we find that as maybe some, invisible connecting thread.
Totally. I fuck with that. So tell me about what your role is there as the vice president. What's the day-to-day operations look like for you?
So, currently we have a pretty full team. So my role has evolved a lot over the years. And, I've got 2 directors beneath me, and then we've got a whole team below them. So there's about 15 of us in the company. I mean, we're small, but we're doing full service label, publisher, and merchandise company with 15 of us and about 20-ish artists on the roster. And so we stay very busy. We wear a lot of hats. But a lot of what I've been doing the past year or two, kind of hitting a point where I was able to step a little bit back from as much of the day-to-day operations and, that kind of cliche phrase, working on the business versus in the business. But as things always evolve and economic challenges, I don't know, there's been a lot of layoffs in the industry, tech companies. Spotify just laid off like 1,500 people. Amazon Music had big layoffs recently. So many people are closing. There's companies going out of business. So we're always looking to be, on our toes, ready to move, adapt, and stay. And so we've had to make a few tough decisions. We've downsized our roster a little bit. We've had a few personnel changes. And so I'll be getting a little more back into the day-to-day, going into 2024, but with more of a focus on a few key areas of the business. So as an independent label where there is no, venture capital, no big institutional investor of any kind behind us, whatever we make, we reinvest and just keep building on our own. And so having multiple revenue streams has been, such a key part of our strategy. So instead of being just a record label, and there are definitely, various revenue streams, whether it's streaming, sales, content ID, other types of things within the label side, but we're also a publisher. So we go after licensing and sync licensing for getting music into film, TV, video games, and then trying to also build the merchandise business. But a big part of my focus going into next year is our sync and licensing operations. So we have had a lot of success there. The landscape is always changing. We're working with a few different partners over the last few years, and we've just launched kind of a new division of the company that is a new catalog within our roster called the Fixt New Noise catalog. And we're taking artist material, like to the public, it would just be the same music from our artists that they've always seen. But behind the scenes, it's kind of split off to a new catalog with some key sync partners to place the music in film and TV. And so we have a company in the US that is exclusively repping that catalog in North America. And then we have about 20 sub-publishers worldwide. So we've had to go do deals with like 20 separate companies. These are all, unique agreements, setups, deliveries, relationships to manage. So there's this whole now ecosystem that we have to foster to make sure this catalog gets out into the world correctly for sync licensing.
Amazing. And I would imagine that that's where more of the money comes from in terms of compared to like the record label side compared to merch sales. Because, I know those sync deals can be pretty big. Would you say just collectively that's where the bigger piece of the pie is for you?
So currently, the sync and publishing side of the business is only about 15 or 20% of our overall revenue. Like 60% is digital, like sales and streaming of music. And then the other, whatever that is, 25 or so percent is merchandise. So we have had years, there have been years in our history where sync was more the lion's share, where, yeah, a single deal could be a 5 or 6 figure license. And it's like, wow, you don't need a whole lot of those for that to add up quick, but it's gotten ever more competitive and the prices have gotten driven down because everyone else is willing to do things cheaper. So the prices aren't as high as they used to be unless you get, there's still special deals out there that can mean a lot, but they're fewer and further between.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you mentioned that there's been some layoffs around, Amazon, Spotify, just sort of in the music industry in general. What do you think is contributing to these companies downsizing?
I think there's probably a lot of reasons, and I'm not one to necessarily hypothesize about those things necessarily, but I think the economy, inflation, I think there's been a lot of bad actors out there in the space where there's a lot of kind of inflation in terms of the money injected into some of these companies by investors, and then reality hitting, years later that, oh, maybe this is not going to be sustainable. And at some point, these companies have to show profit, so they're immediately cutting all of this overhead.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what's cool about you guys is you don't have that big fuck you money from venture capitalists and then are in debt, basically. You guys, I imagine, have a lot more freedom with how you can steer the ship, what you guys can do. And what I really love about you, I find so interesting, and I've never seen this before, because I came from working at major labels, before, and seeing that whole world and that ecosystem where it is kind of a churn and burn. An artist gets signed, throw out an album, throw out a bunch of artists, hopefully one of them sticks. If they don't, then it's like, all right, see you later. You're out of here. And what I think is incredible about what you guys are doing is, well, one, a lot of my audience that's listening are music producers and DJs, and in the EDM world, what's so common is just doing single deals, right? You're just signing it, you're wrapping up a song, and then you're trying to get it signed. You're putting out one song, and that's also, it's a great strategy because you can put out a lot of different songs with a lot of different labels. You can tap into those different markets, and it's definitely one approach. But you guys are like a true artist development label where you're signing artists and you're giving them really amazing services. Obviously, putting out their records, but you're also helping with the publishing. You're helping with the merchandise. And what I really, really, really love, and I'm blown away, is that you're also providing, I don't even know how to call it, what it is that you're providing, but just like artist support. Like you are having calls with them and you're helping them with strategy. You're helping them with just even their mindset and their well-being. And this is something that we started talking about, because I might come on and maybe have some conversations with the roster, which is a really, really, really exciting thing to explore. But I would love for you to share, what are these extra secret services that you guys are providing as a label, which I have never seen any label ever do, and I'm just blown away by it.
Well, yeah, thank you for that. And that is the reaction we get from almost any industry people we talk to, like, you guys do what? But this is just the way that we, believe based on our values and what we would want to see, a label offer. And we're an artist-owned label, so it's very much, we have an artist mindset. While we are the label, there's always some tension between, artist versus label and some creative balances or, between those. But the way we approach things, to actually go back to something you mentioned about, kind of the EDM mindset, where it's very single by single, you just hopping around to all the labels. We have experimented with that business model, and it has not worked for us. So we had about a 2 or 3 year period where we did a bunch of one-off deals. And all these artists saw what we were doing for our, legacy artists, all these artists that had been working with us for so long and where we had built them. And on the reputation of what we had done with these other artists, they wanted to come work with us, but it was within this model of like, let's just try a single. And I think a lot of them were honestly disappointed, and we were disappointed with the results. But what we step back and realize is what they saw us doing with these other artists was we had long-term exclusive relationships with the artists where we could invest in them, not just for one song, but, sometimes multiple years, multiple albums, and really be a support system around them and help build them. A lot of times one song is not enough to move the needle. And we've seen even artists that we have signed to an exclusive album. We're pitching things to Spotify, to Apple, to YouTube, to all these big playlists that you want to get on. And sometimes it takes 2-3 singles of them to kind of see the same artist coming across their desk from the same voice pitching it before they're like, okay, like this isn't just a flash in the pan thing. There's something here. These guys are going to be around. This is something they really care about. And there is this upside to kind of long-term development in supporting an artist. So we actually just, in the last month or so, announced to our roster that we're going back to completely exclusive deals where we're not looking to do one-off deals. We don't really feel they serve us or the artist. They don't get the best value out of what we can offer. And we want to be putting out world-class material. So we're like, it's in all of our best interest to do what's going to serve the art the best. And that is to be able to develop it over time. So another analogy I have used, though, is like, every song you put out, you're trying to build this foundation of your career, and you've got all these bricks. And if you put a brick over here and then go a mile down the road and put a brick there, you're not building anything. But you build it all in one place, you can actually build a strong foundation. So we kind of view it through that lens. And then again, building those multiple revenue streams all under one roof. There's just so much synergy that we're able to add so much more value. And then as far as kind of those extra things we do, we have just really wanted to create this support network for our artists. Some of the biggest complaints we hear from artists when they have worked with other labels, and we have had a lot of artists come over from bad label experiences working with other labels. And what are their biggest complaints? They can never get a hold of anybody. Nobody responds to their messages. That's very common. And maybe not at major labels, but at a lot of independent labels. They also don't get statements and they don't get paid. And we're like, we're going to make sure those are never an issue here. So we give all of our roster artists access to our entire staff in a Discord server where our artists and staff can all be in there together. Each artist has a private thread with our staff, with the staff we have being over different time zones. Anyone on our artist easily has 50 plus hours a week of real-time access to our team. They can just message us and get a real-time response. And then they also have an opportunity to have a community with the other artists on the roster. Instead of just being signed to this label and it looks cool that you're alongside these other artists, we're actually putting them together in a collaborative environment. And that has led to artists working together. They're fans of each other. They're helping each other out. And then we do these monthly webinars where we either present something from our staff or from a guest presenter, and we share educational or inspirational information. And we really try to develop this sense of we're all in this together. So it's our staff plus artists on these group calls, and, really just building, the educational side. And we really think that that's a part of the development. So we brought on, guest speakers that have talked about like how to understand like publishing and copyright, like very technical conversations that a lot of artists don't understand. And then we have had like mental health guests where we brought in a guest that just talked all about like mental well-being and mental health within the creative music industry. And then we've had production workshops, and going into next year, we're doing quarterly production workshops where once a quarter, we bring on a guest that, has an impressive resume and they do a 90-minute production workshop with any of our artists that want to attend and get to learn, tips and tricks, techniques. We've had huge producers like Joey Sturgis come on and do that with our artists. Next week, we've got an award-winning, very known video game composer, like responsible for the Halo theme and a bunch of stuff, tons of games. Tom Salta, he's coming on and doing a workshop with our artists. So we really try to foster this education and development. And then we just started doing artist huddles, which I just came from an artist huddle right before we jumped on. And any of our artists that are available, there's no agenda, but we just say, hey, artists, twice a month or whatever, we have this artist huddle. Artists jump on, and it's just a chance to hang out because everybody's remotely spread out. We're not all in the same place. And we talk to all these artists individually and realize everyone struggles with the same types of things, these creative struggles, feeling like their art isn't good enough, and the burnout and all of these things. And what we found is just creating a place for them to realize, oh, like I'm part of this community of other artists that are all going through it. We're not alone. It just gives that. Almost every time we get off of these calls, the artists, I'll have multiple artists message me and be like, that was so inspiring. Like, I'm pumped. I can't wait to go dig back into music.
Dude, it's so rad, man, because I think the biggest piece about all of that, it's community. Like, you've created a community within the label ecosphere, and that's so uncommon because most artists, it's like, yeah, you get signed to the label, and like you said, maybe you don't even have access to the people that work there, let alone access to the other artists. And I think that community piece is so important, especially when you're a music producer. Maybe you're a solo artist, you're just making music by yourself in your room all the time, and it can be a very dark and lonely path. So to be able to provide that and create that space as a label to really be going above and beyond in that way, I think is so amazing. And it's really cool because that's exactly what I'm creating right now on my end, because I've always worked one-on-one with my clients as far as artist coaching. And that's really special. They get a lot of attention. We can get really deep, really vulnerable. Like we go into some fucking deep trenches together. They've got that personal accountability. I'm in their back pocket. They can pull out their phone and send me a message anytime, and they got that support. But it's also different when you're in a room or in a Zoom or a Discord hangout and you've got 10 other artists in there that are like, yo, I totally get what you're going through. Here's what I've done to get through that. Or just like, I understand you. I feel seen. And there's a really special kind of magical power about that. And so I've just been building out a group coaching program. I'm very excited to be scaling into that model now, where I can now coach 20 people at a time, 30 people at a time, and more importantly, create a community where everybody can connect. And so right now I took on 10 people to kind of be my beta group, like my guinea pigs, where we just did the 4th week. So I'm kind of coaching and teaching them all the lessons and the things that I would normally be coaching people on. But I'm starting to see the magic of the community unfold. And I just built a Discord group for my first time. And, getting on the calls is amazing because there's just so much fun energy there and support. But last night was a really cool breakthrough moment where I have like a support channel on the Discord where if anybody's just going through something, they need help, they need some support. Somebody showed up and said, hey, I'm kind of going through it. I'm feeling a little discouraged or whatever. And then 4 people immediately were right in there like, yo, dude, like, I get it. I'm going through the same shit too. Like, you got this. And it was just seeing that level of support. It was so rewarding for me because I'm like, damn, it's not even me anymore. Usually I'm the one supporting everybody, but I'm seeing them support each other, which was just so rad. And it's starting to kind of take a life of its own. So I'm really, really excited to officially launch this in January. Just a plug, if y'all are interested and you want to be a part of this, it's going to be fucking epic. There's already like a waiting list to get on. So if you're interested, shoot me a DM. I'll probably run a little sale on this if you want to get that VIP early access. But man, that community, I think this is the answer. This is why I live in Austin, Texas. It's like I had left LA. I'd lived in Orange County and San Diego. I'd left my community in LA of artists and just everybody that I knew for 13 years. Moved in with a girlfriend, and then it was just kind of me and her, and I didn't have that circle, and it was a fucking, like, I kind of spiraled out. I kind of like lost myself. So coming out to Austin, I'm like, these are all my coach homies are out here. So anytime, any day, any week, I can go out and I can hang out with like 20 people. Like I got these big circles, and it's, I mean, if anyone has watched my journey over the last year, like, you can see I'm a different fucking person than I was a year ago. I'm alive. I'm excited. And that's because I get to connect with other humans again. And like, we need that shit, you know?
Dude, that is awesome. I'm super excited for your group coaching stuff. I went through an executive coaching program a couple years ago. There was one-on-one and group, and it was amazing. I think that's going to do very well for you. I think for me, we have limited resources in that, like, there's only so many artists that we can manage on our roster. But one of the things that I've really wanted to do is, I think of the phrase, your sphere of influence. And I'm like, I want to expand my sphere of influence in making a positive impact in the world. And, we definitely do one-on-one artist things. We work with every artist individually, but that one-to-many approach is also like, man, we can be working with a group of artists in this community setting. And I'm already thinking ahead to, our business model is not, as a label, publisher, merch company, we're not looking to be like offer consulting and coaching and stuff, but I'm thinking like, man, there's got to be ways for us to take what we're doing with our roster and try and bring that out to a wider audience, and maybe do like, a public seminar, and take some of the things that we've worked with our own group and just do some special events and open it up to the public or to other artists from any walks of, anybody that would be interested in that from Fixt. So probably people in our genre sphere, but that aren't on the label, that see what we do and be like, hey, come join a 3-hour seminar that we're going to put on, and share what we do with our artists, but share it with a whole group of people.
Yeah. Well, look, man, I'm gonna plant the seed right now, because I have been thinking about South by Southwest here in Austin coming up in March, which is not that far away, but I'm like, I feel like I need to be out there. I want to host a panel, maybe like, I was thinking like maybe it's a mental health panel or something like that. But I think y'all got to get out here, and we do a fucking headliner mindset Fixt Records artist development workshop. There's going to be thousands of people in town. We'll fill that bitch up. My friend was saying she's got a plug with Spotify that loves to sponsor things like that. We get a sick sponsor. Let's do it, baby. Let's go.
Let's make it happen. Let's follow up on whatever steps we have to put in place.
Dude, hell yeah. All right. Well, we're going to sidebar that convo, but I would love to know, what can we share with artists to help them grow? And let's specifically talk about marketing, because you guys, I'd love to know what your process is. You have a new song coming out. So as a record label, what are the things that you're lining up? How do you properly roll out a release? What are the things that people should be thinking about, the checklist that they should be going through to make sure that they're doing everything that they can to make sure as many people are really getting out there to hear their music?
So there's a lot to unpack there. I'll see what points I can hit without making this a 3-hour Joe Rogan episode. But, we created a kind of a best practices guide, a PDF that we share out with our artists that gives, there's probably 20 different items in there, so that they have a checklist of some things that the artist should be doing.
I just first got to say, it's so fucking cool that you have that. Like, what labels are giving PDFs to their artists and telling them, these lists? Like, that's incredible, man. You guys are next level.
But then on the label side, there are some kind of standard checklist items, and some of it is, just pretty standard for us. I mean, maybe other people will feel the same way or not, but from just certain deliverable packages, we've got banners, we've got promo videos, we have a video editor that not just is a video editor, but understands audio editing. And so, he's taking people's tracks and custom editing them to a little bite size, 30, 60-second promo. and it's got the artist branding, the label branding, and it really is a very professional presentation of, hey, there's new music from this artist and from Fixt. So obviously that goes to the label socials. We encourage the artist to share that on theirs. We definitely encourage artists. The more they can get involved as well, it makes a difference to their audience. And I think there is, and we've wrestled with this with some artists, where some artists are like, okay, I signed to a label. I just deliver the music and get to step back and not do anything. And that, there was a time where maybe that flew, but that's less and less. It's like, man, we got to both be out here working, not just getting the music released, but promoting it. And so the artists that are engaging on socials, shooting their own content, not just like the label promo that they share, but like jumping on camera, and whether that's, just short form video. Doesn't matter if it's TikTok, Reels, Shorts, but showing up and being accessible to fans. Fans want that connection and to go deeper. So the artists that do that, and the artists that have kind of overcome that hurdle of like being shy or putting themselves out there, which is a big hurdle for some artists to get over. But once they get over there, man, it connects in such a bigger way. And I think the idea, there's still a lot of artists that feel like if they're going to be on camera, it has to be super produced. And so that's the barrier to them doing it. But it is, there's no debate anymore. You can just flip your camera on, film something, post it, and that's good enough. So obviously on the label side, to go back to things we do, we are always kind of in this tension, again, between like the artist side and the label side on lead time. We have the technical ability to deliver something, through distribution, and we could have it live on all the stores in a few days notice, but that doesn't do us any good when we need to have lead time to pitch it for editorial consideration, playlists, not just DSPs, but on the press side. And we have a team, from being an independent artist where maybe it's just about initially getting your music on platforms and then telling your audience. When you're working with a label, and we still struggle with this with some artists where they just want to make their music live because it's done. And so the discipline to be like, okay, we have to also have lead time, be patient. There's a process, and let's give the team time to do their best work. And more, whether it's Apple or, YouTube, any of the DSPs, they want more lead times. And some of them have very specific cutoffs. They need 3-4 weeks for you to pitch it. And if you haven't pitched it within, that window or before that window, they're not going to consider it for editorial placement. And for the investment we're making in not just money, but our time, which is such a limited resource, we're like, we don't want to take shortcuts and not give this every chance that it can to be the biggest success that it can. And, in 5 years from now, are you going to remember that it came out on January 15th or February 12th? But if we might be able to change the trajectory of where that track is going to go over the course of the life, those few extra weeks are probably worth taking to do it right.
Totally. Yeah, that's a great point there, just to have some patience and do it right. Do it the right way. Give it that extra time. Make sure you have a game plan. And with these editorials, that's obviously a lot of artists' big goals. We want to get those Spotify plays up, right? So we want to get our music onto these editorial playlists. Are we just talking Spotify here, or are there other? I guess Apple as well. I'm not an Apple user, so I feel like I don't pay any attention to it. But
Spotify is our number one streaming DSP. YouTube has now surpassed Apple for us. So YouTube Music has become an important one. And we have gotten editorial on YouTube. We've gotten, we consistently get Spotify editorial. Apple is fewer and further between. They're always challenging. YouTube has been a little challenging, but we're seeing a lot of growth there.
So are there, because I know, Spotify, the landscape is that there's Spotify editorials that are run by people that work at Spotify, but then there's also a lot of, private editorials that are just other people, or maybe, I don't know, labels or something that are curating lists. And is it the same at YouTube? Are there actual YouTube editorials, or is it just people that have big YouTube channels, or YouTube has its own thing?
It is confusing, a little confusing within YouTube's ecosystem, because there's YouTube, just music on YouTube that people upload, or the artist channels. There's Vivo, which is a music video lane, which has a big presence on YouTube. And we've done really well with all of our music videos to Vivo, but they show up on the artist channel. And then there's YouTube Music, which is kind of separate. And then there's also, they call them topic channels. So when your music gets released, there's this topic channel thing. So it is a little confusing, but specifically with YouTube Music, there is an actual editorial, platform there, and they have curated playlists by YouTube Music staff. And so we have seen some success there, and just we've noticed, even without certain editorial success there are people that are clearly moving to YouTube Music as their platform of choice, because our catalog has just grown organically there. So there was people that maybe already knew our music from wherever over the years. Now they've signed up with YouTube Music, and they're increasing their listens of our music on that platform.
Interesting.
As far as third-party playlists and, outside of the official editorial space with, Spotify official editorial, that has been quite a beast of a side of the industry for several years. So 5 or 6 years ago, we had maybe a 2 or 3 year run where we built out a network of thousands of independent playlists that we researched. We found who ran them. We were messaging them our music. Hey, this is the playlist you curate. We have a new release that fits this genre. It sounds like something you would like. Would you consider checking it out? And for a couple of years, we had massive success. And then, of course, anything good always kind of gets ruined. Those same editors, their playlists grew, these private individuals, their playlists grew to a point where bigger companies, other labels, other, marketing companies came in and started buying them, and people sold their lists. Or some of them even just privately were just starting to be like, oh yeah, I'll add you, but Venmo me $50. And our stance has always been, we do not and have not ever paid for playlist placement. It's against Spotify's terms of service. But
this is kind of like payola coming back.
Yes, but even worse, and there's a lot of news out right now about Spotify has announced some new royalty processing changes going into next year, that they have changed how they calculate some things to fight fraud. So there's like a threshold that your song has to hit before they start paying royalties. And then if a song gets identified as having fraudulent streams, or, botted streams, like a bot farm where people are selling guaranteed Spotify streams saying, hey, pay us as a marketing company, $1,500 and we'll guarantee you get, 100,000 streams on your song. If they're guaranteeing
fake streams,
if they're guaranteeing it, it's fake. It's fraudulent, because nobody can guarantee it in a legit way. So Spotify has now announced they're going to give a fine back to whoever distributed those tracks if a track is found out to be fraudulent. So not only do you not get paid, you could get fined. So they're fighting it. But all that to say, that landscape completely changed from it being kind of a thriving third-party playlist ecosystem to now we recommend all of our artists do not even engage with a playlisting company. It's too risky. We've had artists that didn't tell us they were hiring an extra marketing company on the side to promote their track. And we get a fraudulent stream report from Spotify, and we're like, hey, your song says it had 120,000 streams in the first month, and 100,000 of them registered as fraudulent. So we're not getting paid for that. And like, whoever you were using, you need to stop using this company.
Wow. Yeah. So Are you still pitching yourself as a label to these probably a much smaller list now of third party editorial playlists?
Yeah, we only bother pitching to a very select group of playlist companies that we know, have built a relationship with. We know they're legit, they're respected brands or platforms. But we used to spend a significant amount of time on third-party playlisting, and now it's a very, very minimal amount of time. Instead, what we have done is we've invested in our own label-owned playlists. And so we have a handful of playlists that we've had running for years, and we've ran some Facebook and Instagram ads to our own playlists a few times over the years. And, after years of these playlists running, one of them had like 5,000 followers. One of them had a little over 10,000 followers. And then we realized, like, I think we need to go more aggressive on this. We're working with an agency that we really trust, Venture Music, highly recommend them. Got a whole story about knowing those guys. They're just an amazing group of people. They're based out of Nashville. And they will help run kind of basically any level of music marketing service that an independent artist or a label uses. They do have some major label clients now, but they definitely have curated, their services to a lot of independent artists and independent labels. They'll help with content strategy for short form video. They will even help with editing, some of, helping their artists find their voice on TikTok and then build their TikTok following. We did a campaign with them for one of our artists for TikTok a couple years ago, and saw significant growth. And they used to be involved kind of on the playlisting space, kind of how we were. But then as that kind of shattered, they've evolved into other levels of just music marketing. But we went back to them recently and brought them on to run ads for two of our core label playlists. And we have seen exponential growth on these playlists to the point that our artists are seeing more value out of just being on our label playlist than even Spotify editorial in some cases. Because sometimes you get on this big Spotify editorial, but some of them you're only on there for a week and you're off. So it's like, hey, we made this huge playlist. It was on there for a week and we got 5,000 streams in a week. And we're like, we can put you on a label playlist that we're driving high engaged people to through our own advertising. We can control what's on the playlist, how long it's on there. And we're seeing, exponentially more streams on some of these tracks than when they get on the Spotify editorial. So we had these two playlists 2 months prior to running this new campaign. Our label playlist had driven about 60,000 streams of our catalog. 2 months of running ads on them, and it was, over a 5x increase. It went from 60,000 streams in 2 months to like 350,000 streams in 2 months.
Hell yeah.
And we're continuing to scale that. And so...
And where were you guys running ads to? Where's this traffic coming from?
Completely Facebook and Instagram. So we're just finding the right targeting, getting, running multiple versions of the ad, A/B testing, finding what's resonating, and kind of dialing it in, and then increasing the spend because we're getting the cost per click, low enough that it's like, hey, we're sending people to a playlist that has, 100 tracks on it, and they're all our songs. So every stream is coming back to us. And it's not just about, the immediate ROI of that ad spend is still technically negative, what we're spending versus what's coming back on the streams. But within the Spotify ecosystem, it's not just about the stream now, but the further we push the track into Spotify's algorithmic system, we're kind of seeding it for even more benefits in their system, where now it's going to get picked up on Discover Weekly, and now it's hitting on their radio, algorithmic radio. So it is a longer play before we'll see the full return, but it's been one of our best experiments in quite a few years, where we've kind of found like, okay, there's something magical about what we're doing, so we're really pushing it.
Yeah, it is magical. Isn't it kind of exciting? We just like, this is where marketing gets fun. It's like, what's the puzzle piece? What's the Tetris game that we can play to try shit out? And then you're like, oh, wait, it's working. It's working. Wait a minute, you know? So that's really exciting, man. Congrats on that. And you said you're working with this marketing agency that's been helping you guys with all this strategy side of it.
Yeah, with the playlist ads, we're specifically utilizing them, and we're about 3 months in, and based on what we've seen in the first 3 months, we're like, we're gonna do this for all of 2024, and like just keep scaling.
I gotta get into that game because I have gotten the most amazing feedback, and I want to just pause for a moment to say thank you all so much for listening, for supporting, like for the DMs. Like I have just gotten the best feedback in the world from the people that are out there that have been listening to the Headliner Mindset, and it's great because I'm like, damn, I want to get this out to more people, and I think I got to start getting into the marketing game, start running some ads, figure out like how do you really push a podcast forward. But I just want to take this moment to say thank you to everybody that's been listening. I had my very first Spotify wrap up. I've always seen artists talking about their end of the year Spotify statistics. And so for me, I got to have my end of the year podcast statistics, which was so cool. I got my very first little graphic that I was so excited to share on my Instagram. But the coolest thing about it was I had a bunch of people through their own Spotify wrap up as listeners. They were able to like basically share to me and to my story being like the top listeners. So I had 136 people that I am their number one podcast. So big fucking shout out to all my headliners out there. 136 of you. There was like 400 and something that I was in their top 5. So I just love you guys so much. I'm so honored. And yeah, we're gonna blow this shit up, dude. I'm gonna find a marketing agency. We're gonna figure this shit out, and we're gonna get this out to more people. But yeah, I just want to say thank you all for listening. You guys are the best. It warms my black little heart.
I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, what would you recommend to artists that aren't signed to one of the most incredible labels in the world that's providing all these incredible services and helping out their artists so much? If they're an independent artist and they're trying to figure out this Spotify game and this editorial game, what do you think would be the best approach for an independent artist to take that doesn't have that label support?
I think we're in a time where being independent is a very viable option for a lot of artists. And we definitely realize we're not just competing with other labels. We're competing with artists that can choose to be independent and do it on their own. But as far as, recommendations for independent artists, I think the biggest one is patience, that they need to, they need to show up in the micro with a lot of hustle, Gary V kind of macro patience, micro hustle. So you got to show up every day working really hard, but then also realize this may take years to build. But if you're showing up consistently, you're feeding, we spend so much time talking about Spotify, but I think this really goes for socials. So many of the social platforms are very algorithmic driven as well. But the more data you feed in, the more the system knows what to do with you and who to recommend you to. So expecting to put up one song and like put up one song a year, or just like expect the first thing you do is going to hit, like it's not. You're going to have to do it consistently. And there can be oversaturation too. So, don't be releasing a song every day, probably not every week, but, find a cadence that is sustainable. We talk a lot about here at Fixt about sustainability, and not just, that's various facets of that word. As a business, we need to be running sustainably and all of that, but really from the artist's perspective, avoiding burnout. And so there's always this pressure that you've got to be doing more. You've got to be on video. You got to be on TikTok. You got to be putting out all this content, but find what is sustainable to you. And so if that's, hey, I'm going to put a new song out every month or every 2 months or every 3 months, but once you find what is sustainable for you, then follow it with consistency over time. So, okay, a song every 2 months for the next 2 years. And I guarantee you're going to be way further 2 years from now by taking that consistent road, ramp up than kind of scattershot. Here's something now. Oh, it didn't work. I'm going to wait 3 months, throw something else up. Like you kind of have to be committed to seeing a course of action through. And then I wouldn't rely on editorial. Like it's great, pitch to Spotify, your Spotify for artists, get that in there, but take that as a bonus if it happens. Just another thing, we kind of like our playlists and having our own playlists, whether we're running ads actively to them or just maintaining our current playlist for the people that already follow it. We like to focus on what can we control. And when you're at the mercy of an editor, whether that's press or playlist, you're at their mercy, and you don't want to build your career on that. Again, you don't want to build your career on the sand. You want to build it on a solid foundation. So what can you control? You can show up on socials. You can, connect to your own audience. You can build your own playlist, artist owned playlist. Make your own playlist, link it on your Spotify, put your song out, but then tell your fans, hey, here's a playlist I made of a bunch of things that inspired me, and then sprinkle your own music throughout it. And then there's another benefit. If people start engaging with your music and other artists, Spotify realizes, oh, your music is associated. People that like your music also likes these other music. And then those other artists in their Discover Weekly are going to get their fans recommended your music.
Yeah, good point.
So I would say, chasing press. I see a lot of artists, if they have a budget, and some artists really don't have much of a budget, but what breaks my heart when I see an artist that has some money to spend and invest in their career is to go out and hire one of these kind of bad marketing companies who they're like, hey, pay us $1,500, $2,500 a month, and we'll try to pitch you to some playlists. We'll try to find you a manager. And I've seen a lot of those where artists are doing that for 4-6 months at a time, no results, and they're just getting scammed along, in my opinion. And I think, they could have invested that same money in ads to their own project and their own playlist and be way further along. But yeah, it's back to if you're expecting a manager or a label or an editor to miraculously appear and be the key, that almost never plays out. So focus on what you can control, showing up consistently, and just being authentic with what your art is.
Yeah, and I like that you brought that back into the conversation about not expecting a label to do everything for you, not expecting a manager to do everything for you, because I think this is a mindset I see a lot of young artists get stuck in. Is like, oh, I just need to get signed to a label. I just need that manager, right? Like that manager is this knight in shining armor that's going to come and whisk you off into the sunset and save the day. And I think it's so much more important to really look at it as partnership, right? Like you are a partner. You are a business partner. This is my business. This is my career. This is my destiny. It's up to me to make it happen. And while I'm making it happen, who do I want to partner with to help me and that I can also help them? And we have a mutually aligned vision. This manager wants to be a great manager. I can help him become a great manager by being a great artist. He can help me run a great business by being a great manager and whatnot. So being in that mindset of partnership, I think, is a really important perspective shift to look at. If you got to be doing just as much work, if not more. I mean, you need to be doing more. If you are the artist, this is your career, you need to be doing more work than fucking anybody. But it is finding the people that can fill the holes of where maybe aren't your greatest strengths, which is maybe, putting out the tracks and the playlisting or the marketing or whatever, finding the right people to partner with, but really emphasizing that this is a relationship. We're on the same team together. We're working together. You're, not just passing all the work off to somebody else.
Definitely hit the nail on the head. We think of all of our artist relationships as partnerships. We do 50-50 deals on everything we do. So, net profit split. We only make money if you're making money. Our incentives are aligned. we've got overhead and bills to pay and staff to take care of, and then we want to make a profit too. So we're as incentivized as the artist is to generate profit. And that's another thing that has come up with a lot of artists that have worked with other labels. We do things a little differently with our finances and how we budget and spend, and we err quite a bit more conservatively, but we actually have the end goal of like, we want to be profitable. And like, we see deals and artists that come from deals where it's like they got wooed with like this huge budget, and then the label went and spent all this money and it didn't recoup, it didn't connect. And now that artist is in the hole and they're like never going to make any money from that deal. And we think like that's not being a good steward of their resources. And so when we're working with artists, it's like, we don't want to overspend just because we said like, hey, we have this marketing budget and we have to spend it just to spend it. So we usually set our budgets on the conservative side. We spend what we need to spend, but then if we find, fire somewhere, we're going to pour gas on it and then increase the spending, not just spend because we had to spend.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a really great advertising 101 basic insight when it comes to even just boosting posts. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to make a post and then boost it. And well, what I would say is make 10 posts and then see which ones are performing well, because that one people actually give a fuck about. So you can start putting money into stuff thinking like, oh, I'm going to make this thing and then I'm going to push it. Well, you don't actually know if people care about it. So you can dump all this money into potentially a post or content that nobody really cares about. You can force them to look at it, but you want to see if it's actually working first. And then, yeah, like you said, when it's working, now let's pour some fire on it. Like, okay, that's the one.
Yeah, I think that there is, a lot of ways to waste money. And so we really try to be careful with how we spend and be responsible, that the artists trust us for the strategy. And it is a partnership though. We're working together, discussing things, and we want to be a good partner.
Well, from what I see, I think you guys look like amazing partners. If I was an artist, I would be so excited to get signed to your label, to see everything that you guys are providing, how you are truly going above and beyond to, I think, be a real artist development program and community and ecosystem. And it's just so rare. I'm a really, really big fan of what you guys are doing, and definitely think that we got to explore this idea of getting out to South by, and would definitely love to hop in on some calls with the roster when that time comes. But thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share your wisdom, to share your energy. I learned so much in this conversation. I hope that everybody that's listening did as well. And just excited to connect with you more, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. This was a blast. I love your energy and what you're doing, and really excited for the impact that you're going to have as the podcast continues to grow.
Let myself go.